Hello and welcome to this demonstration on how to use Proj. Proj is an extremely useful project management tool. I suppose the main useful thing about it is that it will allow you to allows you to create a Gantt chart. So you can list all the things that you need to do, all the tasks involved in your project, and set dates and times with them. And then you can see graphically what order things are being done in, how long your project's going to take, and it helps you think about and plan your project. It's a lot like Microsoft Project, but it's free and smaller, and it does fewer things, which arguably makes it easier to use. Although being open source, there's virtually no manual for it. The only manual that's available you pay for, and it's not even that good. So yeah, I'm just fiddling, but you can see. So using these buttons here, you can zoom in and out. Over here, you can see how much time you have. And you can break it down by week or by day or even by hour, depending on how much you zoom in, or you can zoom out and you can break it down by month or quarterly or annually, or yeah, whatever you need to get all the information on the screen. So this is what it looks like, and over here on the left we have a list of tasks. And so how to add a task is probably the first thing. If you just started Proj, you won't have any of these. So if you want to add a task, you can simply click and then start typing in a name, or what I normally find myself doing is right-clicking and then clicking on New, so that adds an extra line. So I've got, what have we got? Draft proposal. So I'm going to put draft recommendations, which I've probably spelt wrong, but like I say, it's just a demonstration, so forgive my spelling if it's bad. So, draft recommendations, and there we go. So I've got a start time, and we're going to have an end time. So I'm going to set my start time. So if my end time for everything else is 31st, then I suppose the recommendations are going to be the last thing I do, so that's going to be roughly towards the 31st. But then I probably won't start it until I don't know, maybe halfway through, so let's say maybe the 17th. And you'll immediately see over here, as soon as I press enter and enter this new date, it's going to adjust the length of this bar. It's also adjusted the end time because there's a duration associated with it. It does have a habit of doing these interesting features, so I'm going to adjust that again and put it back to the 31st. Of course now it's 31st of January, 31st to 12th. No, not 2013. So yeah, this should reassure you that there you go. So yeah, everyone has issues with it. So what I may well make it look easy, although clearly I'm not. This can be expected when you're using Proj, but then indeed any other project management application. Actually, if you can use this drop-down box here, which makes it easier. So this drop-down arrow here allows you to pick a date from a calendar, which is quite a useful thing to be able to do. I was trying to do it quickly and it ended up taking me longer. So I now have my new task in there. I have draft recommendations. It has some start and end date associated with it, and another useful thing that I can do is if I now right click on it and click on indent, then you can see that moves it in a notch and gives me this this thing here. So basically draft recommendations is now part of the draft proposal, so I can maximize and minimize that and show it and hide it, and you can see, so basically my analysis phase, it's easier to understand on the analysis. So my analysis consists of interviews, discussions with JISC, staff surveys and student surveys. So I can minimize that, and similarly with my requirement spec and drafting my requirement spec, and that makes it much easier to see all the tasks on screen at once. And this black bar here just gives me like an idea of the entire time. I don't need to necessarily see how long each individual piece of analysis is going to take, or indeed how long each individual part of drafting the requirement spec is going to take. So that's some of the big powerful features of Proj, and that in itself is enough to help a great deal when planning planning and preparing your project. But in addition to, so having done that, so if you look at what analysis and requirement spec, you can see that they all come out of each other. If I now go to work breakdown structure, which is this button here, the Gantt chart is the one at the top, work breakdown structure is the fourth one down. Then, so form project team, determine scope of project, that's all sort of separate tasks. But if I go to analysis, you can see that interviews, discussion with JISC, staff survey and student survey are all bits of work associated with analysis and my work breakdown structure. Similarly, if you go over here, you can see the requirement spec. So all of these are bits of work associated with doing a requirement spec. And that is obviously extremely useful because, you know, just this bit by itself, if you wanted to take a screenshot and put that in your Word document, then that will allow you to see the total cost of creating the requirement spec along and all its sort of component parts, and where that, you know, your cost breakdown and your work breakdown all in one handy diagram. Speaking of handy diagrams, if I now go to the second one down, which is a CPA network diagram, critical path analysis, this allows you to specify the order in which you need to do things. And allows you to therefore calculate the critical path. Red tasks, by the way, and you go back to the Gantt chart, the red tasks are part of the critical task, the blue tasks are not, and obviously the way you arrange them here will arrange your critical path overall. Form project team, that has to happen first. We need to really form the project team before we can determine the scope of the project. So form project team, then determine the scope of the project. After we form the project team, we can determine the scope of the projects. Define roles and responsibilities. Well, that can actually be done in parallel to determining the scope. If we argue about the scope, we can still maybe agree on some of our roles and responsibilities. And after we've done that, we can draft the project plan. And once we have that, we can do, you can move these boxes around as well to make your diagram easier, more legible. You need so other handy things. So now we can draft the proposal. So we need our roles and responsibilities, and we need our draft project plan before we can really start drafting the proposal. But this is also going to feed into that one. So hopefully I can move out of the way, and there we go. So, and you know, like all good critical path analysis, it tells you the start, the end date, tells you the duration, and helps you work out the critical path. So these things are all extremely useful, obviously, but you'll notice that we don't actually have any. Oh yeah, if you go back to your Gantt chart, then that tries to give you clues to your critical path as well, and rearrange things, which may infuriate you, and you may like to go back and adjust your critical path to your Gantt chart. Makes more sense. Resources. Now the sixth tab down, no, not the sixth one, it is the third tab down, so this one here, the grid with the man in front of it, or the stick person, is resources tab. So here are some examples of some resources that I'm going to need on my project. So project manager, infrastructure manager, support manager, online communications manager, so different people, but also server hardware, print costs, transport, contingency. There's a number of different things you can do there. You can say there might be an hourly rate, or it might be a sort of one-off cost, and you can specify that. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful options that you can have here, so max units and standard rate, so £0 an hour at the moment, though I should be able to adjust that. So if I go to costs, standard rates, overtime rates, cost per use, so it might be prorated, or it might just be sort of a one-off cost, that all happens at the end. That might be the best way of doing it for a server. Or it might have, you know, a cost per use, or you can configure it as necessary. So, and you can see I've configured some costs for the staff involved. So now if I go back to our Gantt chart, and I say that forming our project team and determining the scope of the project, define roles and responsibilities. So this is all going to take some time. So I've only got start, name, start and finish. You will probably have a few more columns, but you can hide and add extra columns as you need, and there are many, 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 many columns. So one of the columns we're going to need to add at this point is a resources column. So if I press R, then that immediately skips to resources. So we've got resource group, resource initials, let's have resource names. That's the sensible one. So each of my resources now has, each of my tasks now has a start date and end date, and this will tell me what resources are associated. So determining the scope of the project, well, that's going to take some time. Drafting the project plan, this is all going to take some time. So if I double click on this, and then I go to predecessors, successors, resources, advanced notes. So I go to resources, and then I click this button here. This allows me to say, so this drafting the project plan, which I think is the one that we are, whichever one I forget which one it was we were doing now, but so it's going to use all of the people involved. There'll probably also be some transport costs, but it's not going to use 100%, it's going to use maybe 5% of our transport budget, maybe 5% of each of these. No, not 150%, that would just be silly. 5%, and that's also going to be 5%, and 5%, and so on. You can adjust it later if needs be, just putting some example costing information in. So yeah, and then it's going to use 5% of the e-learning coach as well. Great, there it is. So now if I close this, then it says 30 hours and gives me a few details about them, but to be honest that's not interesting. The interesting part is here, so it tells me the resource names, and then at the end over here it also tells me the resources associated with this project. And if I now go to my work break, I can go to basically any one of these, and it will tell me, this one, then it will tell me the costs. There you go. So drafting the project plan is going to cost £10,000 based on the costing information I put in and the time it's going to take to do. So obviously that's nonsense, but I would adjust the amount of time associated. I mean, the main thing, because of the way I think I did my critical path analysis, the start and the end dates don't match up, so that's why it's automatically rearranged my Gantt chart. So these dates have gone a bit ludicrous because I've said that I can't do that one until that one's finished, and I can't start that one until this one's finished. So what I would then do, I guess, is I would unlink all my my critical paths here, and then put my dates back to normal. Or undo is also a useful feature. Control F, Control Z, always useful. And this will allow my dates to settle down. So either make sure that your dates all match up, or make sure that your make sure all your dates match up, or make sure that your critical path network makes sense before you start fiddling with things. Nevertheless, that should now give us a more sensible costing. Yeah, £1,296, which is a little bit more realistic. Though it's obviously still too large, but then I am saying it's going to take almost, how long is that? A week of everyone's time, which actually, £1,200 for a week of professional time of 6 professionals, I think is actually quite reasonable. So yeah, that puts the costing information in. And so the last thing I want to show you is how to get it to produce reports, how to get it to tell you about how much money you've spent so far and how far through the project you are, and to fill in these reporting tabs. So once you've got your project in a way that you're 100% happy with, once you've got your project plan all planned out, once you've got all your dates and your responsibilities, your resources allocated, I'm just doing this as a quick demonstration to get some figures in there, you'd have a few more resource names and things in here. So once you've done that, you need to establish a baseline. So you click on Tools, and you go to Tracking, and you go to Save Baseline. And what that does is that basically that means that these start and finish dates are your planned start and finish dates. So those are then stored and saved. What you can then do is go through your project, and what you can do from time to time is go to Update Project, and you can say update work as complete through to this date. So you can if everything went according to plan, you just say that everything went according to plan up to today's date, and then you click OK, and that will automatically fill in the actual start and finish dates for these different tasks. And you can then go to your report and you can see the progress. The only catch is that you may well have to refresh it, because it won't update automatically. You might have to choose one of these other things and then go back to project details, and now it's saying 36%. So if I, for example, try and go to if I update the project for some date in the past or in the future, then that should, in theory, affect other things. Well, of course, all the costing information is based on something else, although the percent complete should actually modify. So let's have a look. Update project. So let's pretend that this is now in March. Now you'll notice nothing has changed immediately, so if I click on resource information and then go back, so you can see percent complete has jumped up, and so have the number of actual hours and remaining hours and things, and that's how you can simulate the running of a project. OpenProj is a strange piece of software. It is open source and it hasn't actually been updated for some years. It is mostly bug-free, though it does do some strange things that you're not quite expecting, particularly regarding these tasks. If you, especially something like analysis. So if I try and change the length of time my discussion with JISC takes, that's going to completely change the length of time of my analysis, which kind of makes sense, though it will sometimes do things that you're not expecting. Like when I adjusted my my critical path analysis diagram, and that automatically adjusted my Gantt chart, because it was saying, well, I can't start that until this one's finished, so it wouldn't let me do them in parallel as I have here. So just bear those things in mind. If it has done something odd, it is mostly bug-free, so if it has done something odd, chances are there's a logical reason for it. So just work through it logically, and if you're really struggling, then if you're struggling, then do a Google search. There's quite a bit of information there. If you're really struggling, then send me an email and I'll see what I can find out. And that's it. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to email me or leave them on the YouTube forum, and I'll do my best to help. Thank you very much, and I hope this has been useful.